Welcome to another edition of the Subseasonal Forecast Contest. Today is December 9th. My name's David Margolin. And yeah, for today's agenda, I think normal kind of agenda for today. We'll walk through we'll look at attribution. We'll look at the past couple of weeks and see how the forecasts have been verified and talk about that for a few minutes. And then we'll look at today's forecast and give everyone a chance to kind of talk about their forecast process. Okay. Before I get going, any other agenda items? Any other topics that folks want to talk about? Some crazy snowstorm, hurricane, weather event, anything like that?
CFS maybe?
CFS. Okay. Yeah. Well, what in particular about the CFS?
If we go to the heating season 2020 to 2021 metrics.
Uh huh. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking. I saw this too. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, it's doing better. Right. Okay, that's a good one. All right, so we'll put that on the docket here too. We'll talk about that in just a second. Thank you, Philip. All right, so all right, starting with the most recent verification here, and again, it's a light crowd today, so let's just make it really informal. Just jump in if anyone has anything they'd like to share. By the way, is that Greg? Is that you?
You know it.
All right. We got a special guest here, Greg Stanko. Greg's longtime meteorologist like myself, a lot of experience in energy, commodities, and all that kind of good stuff. So just keep that in mind for our younger fellows here that Greg would be a great person if you guys have any questions as we go through this in terms of the energy business and stuff like that. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer. Is that fair to say, Greg?
As long as not breaching any confidentiality agreements, sure.
All right, fair enough. You don't have to tell us about your winter forecast. No. All right. So, but
Cold.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. And just Greg, feel free to just jump in at any time. Like I said, it's pretty informal today. All right. So let's look at the verification. So the most recent verification we have this. We do this once a week. So is for the forecast that ended December 2nd to December 6th. It was made from November 17th. Again, these are 16 to 20 day HDD, gas weighted HDD forecasts. We get our verifications from Maxar. And let's sort, I guess, by performance, CRPS. That's one of our performance metrics here. And looks like our little MGO analog tool did very well this period. Well, first of all, I should say, just get my bearings. The verification came in at just about 122 HDD. You can see that on the bottom. So we verified about 122. And the 30-year normal is, I guess, 126. And the 10-year normal is, where's the 10-year? 118. All right, so that just gives you an idea. So it looks like we fell somewhere between those two numbers. And in terms of the performers, before we dig in, again, the MGO, our little MGO analog tool, which basically just tries to statistical process to match toward the most recent RMM initialization, and then it kind of progresses that forward 16 to 20 days forward, and finds closest analogs, and whatever that mean HDD number is, that's what goes into this. So it did well this week. In terms of human forecasters, Philip, who's on the line today. Philip, I think, was the top human forecaster there. So Philip, we'll have to get some insight from you here in a minute, more into your thought process there. It worked pretty well. And then we had a few other folks. Let's see, in terms of, actually, Philip was the only human forecaster that did better than the 30-year normal. That's it. And then we had some tough ones here. Even Paul Roundy, who's been Professor Roundy, who's been one of our best performers here, looks like went more toward the warmer end for this forecast, and so that didn't work out so much. Let's take a look at the. We also like to take a look at the spatial patterns here, and so let me just move this down a little bit because that darn Zoom kind of got in the way. All right, I can move back now. All right, there we go. December 2nd to December 6th. So that's how the pattern kind of came verified. So warmer temperatures up across the north, cooler temperatures across the south. It's like you almost split the country in half, the exception of the Rockies there. But warm north, kind of cool to the south. And let's also take a look at, happen again. Let's take a look at, this is what, I guess, some of the market and um model forecasts were showing from November, what did I say, 16th, whatever it was, 17th. So you can see the Maxar forecast, kind of mixed spatially, I guess you could say. They definitely had the right themes up across the north, but as we saw, we ended up with a lot more cold, or at least below normal temperatures across the southern half of the country. So that didn't work out so well. And the interior Rockies also didn't work out so well. So spatially, they did well in the Midwest and Northeast, and the other areas struggled a little bit. And you could see the models kind of were basically in line with that forecast. So the models also struggled in those areas. Um, it's always helpful, I think, to kind of read into the reasoning a little bit. Let's at least see, where they're, what was the rationale, things like that. We're just kind of skim over this. Let's see if there's anything that stands out. Patterns expect to be positive VPO. Warmer across north. Confidence is low to moderate. They talked about low side of moderate, so I guess low to moderate. Some of the uncertainty due to the MJO, and they also talked about the CPC upper air analogs didn't show well. Let's you know what? Now that we have it, and now I definitely want to open this up, but let's take a look at the hopefully I have it for today. Let's look at the upper level maps and what they were showing. I'm kind of curious. So let's just sort this by name to make it a little easier. All right, so let's look at I'll pull up the CFS first. So again, these are what, oh shoot, I didn't save it, or it didn't pop up. I must have, I don't know what happened there. It's not that's probably a problem on my end. It's still not an automated process, so it's possible that week that I just forgot to do it. I forgot to save it, so I apologize for that. That would have been nice to look at there. Let's see, maybe, yeah, Philip, maybe I'll open it up to you at least here. What, looks like we had a lot of forecast here. Let's sort by forecast. We had a lot of forecasts here that were, again, the verification was, what was it, 122. We had a lot of forecasts that were warmer than that. You were on the cooler end of things. Kind of what were you thinking there that you think maybe other people weren't picking up on?
I think probably two things that come to my mind. One is that given I do have a 30% weight on the 30-year mean and the 10% weight on the 10-year mean, naturally that pushes my forecast, or that naturally puts a limit on just how warm my forecast can get compared to everything else. And I think the other big thing is my 25% tropical signal. And I mentioned the MJO in my strategy as one of the big reasons. And I mentioned there was a caveat where the models have the signal propagating through the null phase toward phase 6. So at that point, it was in phase 2. So I was looking at the lag composites for phase 2 and also looking at the composites for phase 6, but I wasn't sure if it would actually reach that or not. And then I also noted, ironically, that ENSO La Nina is a cold signal for the northern plains, which clearly isn't what actually happened. But I think that part of it was since my tropical signal is a little dampened compared to some of the other warmer signals. And then the other thing being the teleconnections, where it looked like there was a mixed bag of signals from the 4 teleconnections, AO, NAO, PNA, and EPO. So I treated that as only a slightly warm signal coming in at 121.15.
Yeah. Interesting. So you said, let's see your map here too. Let's see if that worked. All right, that will.
That doesn't, did I click on the wrong thing? Okay.
Maybe.
I think I may have clicked on the wrong thing where I meant to make that all red.
Right. This was early on, and I think, right, there was still some getting used to it, right? But yeah. So you were kind of thinking, so all right, let's assume this is normal. This is all red. So it sounds like you kind of had, spatially, you kind of had the same issues maybe as Maxar, but it looks like overall you didn't see the intensity maybe as high, and that's why, you know, maybe these were kind of like weak aboves as opposed to stronger aboves.
Yeah,
If I'm
that
reading into your forecast.
that sounds about right.
Okay. So I'm just curious, let's dig into your MGO thing a little bit, because you said, all right, so this is back on, I guess it's even, we were in November. So let's go to November. This is November, the initialization from November 20th, 10th, there's 10th and 20th, depending on which one you were looking at. And you said we were at, when were we? Let's go here.
I think we were in phase, either in phase 2 or close to the null phase.
Yeah, you're right. There's November 17th, right?
Okay.
So, and I guess on the 17th, actually, you probably, we only had data through the 15th, so you probably saw that we were right at the edge of 1 and 2, something like that, assuming that, I think that changes. So yeah, so if we were at 1 and 2, right about there, yeah, that would have been basically a very, very weak signal, right? Right around there, right? And then what was our MGO tool was showing? Yeah, it was showing what was the 30-year here, 126, and yeah, it was pretty close to the 30-year. So yeah, that makes, so I see what you're saying there for sure. I'm curious, and Paul, let's see if he elaborates at all. Going warm, some transition northwest noise. It seems like the thing that may have fouled up some of us, you know, was the coolness in the south, right? You know, I mean, I guess you could play, you, depending on what your verification is, you could play it one way or the other. If it wasn't for those damn cool anomalies in the south, this would have been a much warmer forecast, right? Lower HDDs. On the flip side, I guess if these you know, cool temperature anomalies had snuck just a little bit further north, infringing on Chicago or New York, this could have been a much colder HDD forecast too, right? But it seems like of all the things in the market forecast and in the model forecast, it seems like they did not do a good job. It's a shame that I can't pick up on the 500 millibar pattern.
Well, hey Dave.
Yeah, go ahead.
I put it into the chat. At least one of the CFS is, although it's not a 5-day forecast, but you get a little bit of the idea of what the hell the CFS was showing if you throw it into the chat. It's that web link that I put in there. Yeah, no problem.
All right, oh, cool. So this was, oh, great. So this was the forecast from the 17th. Perfect. And verifying, yeah, this would be, yeah.
It's a little bit out of the dates, but yeah, it's well within reason. As you can see, it's just the models were just basically saying, like, screw it, we got a Western-ish type of trough, and we're going to torch the East.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at the verification, and we can do that on Dynacast, right? So let's go back. Where's Dynacast here? Here we go. So let's change that to 500. See what this bad boy looks like. Oh yeah, this is great, Greg. This is great. Yep. Because you can, let me see if I can pull this out and just kind of put it next to it. That's not what I want. Other tidbits.
You're getting there. You're getting there, Dave. You're getting there.
Give me another 10 minutes. No. Sorry. All right. We may not get this perfect, but we'll get it close anyway. Move this over a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see it on your screen. Yeah, there we go. That's good enough. Yeah, and you could definitely see some of the issues here. Oh my God. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, okay, Greg, I'm really glad you pulled this up, because this is actually worse than I thought. From a
yeah. I mean, from a market perspective, I'm not going to talk about like in terms of like forecast wise, but you can enter into and at least getting the idea that a lot of people were just like saying, you know what, it's just a torch. Good night, God bless, drive home safely, winter is over with.
Oh yeah, no, this is great. I mean, look, these errors. I honestly, I'm glad we looked at this, because I thought if you had asked me, I thought it was going to show maybe a little bit more troughing kind of snuck into the south, but it wasn't that different. No, I mean, this is clearly different, right? The center of the ridge is shifted not over, you know, the Northeast. It's over Northwest United States, Rockies, all the way up, you know, into Canada there.
Yeah,
And,
basically the center of the 500 millibar high was over Boise. I'm looking at verification on the 5th, 0Z the 5th, just in that time frame. So D's 4th at 6 p.m. Yeah, 500 millibar ridge right through there.
No, this is great. I mean, this entire let's look at the PNA index here in a second, but because I'm sure it's going to be a big error. But I mean, look at this entire PNA configuration, or whatever, Pacific North America, whether you take that literally the index or not. But just look at the Pacific North America pattern here in terms of what verified versus the forecast. I mean, again, starting all the way out there, just east of, and even including Japan and Southeast Asia. And then in particular from Hawaii all the way up to the North Pole. I mean, look at the difference there, right? I mean, just dramatically different. And then, of course, ultimately and most importantly, verifying across the United States, just completely, this is a horrible, this was not a game of, oh, geez, a little bit more cool guy in the South. This pattern did not verify as expected. Let's look at that. Is that right? I'm going to pull this back now. Let's go to the PNA index, because I just want to see if it registers as badly as it looks. That's interesting. So this PNA, well, I guess this is only a 14-day forecast, so maybe we're further out. Yeah. But clearly it does show, right, that there has been, these are the forecasts. It's been verifying much more positive on day 14 than expected, in some cases outside of the distribution here. But it looks to me like, obviously this is a 16 to 20 day, where you would expect even higher errors. And it looks like maybe the forecast started to, the model started to pick up on it a little bit better as it came into the 11 to 15 than it did in the 16 to 20. Because again, that 16 to 20 forecast looks good for. Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just looked up and I pulled up stuff. I can't share it, but for the most part, I just looked at the Euro ensemble from the 17th to the 20th, the hour 360 print. And when you looked at 360 to try to extrapolate it into the 16 to 20, trough extending all the way from Alaska down to Cali. And then when you go to 360 based off of Saturday the 21st initialization, guess what? There's a ridge popping along the West Coast. So catching that.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah. And then, of course, the $1 million question is, and maybe Greg, you have some insight on this, but like, what was it? Like, what changed between that 16 to 20 to that at some point in that 11 to 15 that the models were able to identify the something closer to reality? What was it? Was it well, any idea what it was able to pick up on in the 11 to 15 that it did not see in the 16 to 20?
I mean, other than just starting to pick up on the idea that there was going to be a little bit more southern stream energy and a little bit more ridginess, a little more persistent ridginess across Western North America. That's pretty much it. When it comes to the actual MGO phases and whatnot, I don't recall exactly what they were showing and how they shifted. That's for someone else to figure out for me, if you know what I mean.
Right. No, I mean, and these are right. These are difficult questions, right? And most of these questions we don't have answers to, and if we did, we probably wouldn't want to share them anyway. No. But
I got to leave now. No, just joking.
But I welcome also Philip and stuff like. I guess again, one of the questions, again, in all seriousness, we ask is this a repeatable error or not? Like I wonder, right? I look at this and in the 16 to 20, is this something that if we could run this scenario 100 times, 1,000 times, is there something repeatable here that we can learn from for next time, so that if we saw this, next winter at around the same time, if we saw this, the same scenario, we would say, oh, no, it's probably, we should probably pattern correct, not just bias correct, but, pattern correct, not just temperature focus, but pattern, hemispheric pattern correction to shift more toward this. Or, and again, I don't expect anyone to have an answer to this really, because these are tough questions, but, or is it just beyond the science right now? Is it somewhat random in terms of why this one verified like this And maybe next week, we'll have the same forecast. Actually, we do have some, I think, some pretty warm forecasts out there, or at least we did. And is it just as likely that it actually verifies closer to the model projection? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Is there something about the MGO? Is there something about the tropical forcing state? Is there something about the time of year? Is there something about the stratosphere? Is there something out there that leads to a systematic bias or not? What do you guys think?
So I'll just toss out, this is something I've noticed about the PNA since it was brought up. With the 14-day verification that you looked at, usually what I've noticed is depending on, and I haven't been able to figure out what causes it or which side it'll flip to, but it's usually pretty consistently on one of the two ranges. So it'll either be verifying at the upper ends, so like the top end of the range, or at the bottom end of the range at the 14-day window. And I think before this period, and this is I'm not sure about this, as I'm just kind of speaking from memory, that I'm pretty sure it was verifying more negative up to about this period. And it looks like from the chart that we just looked at that it had flipped to now verifying more positive than in previous times. So that might have had something to do with that. Yeah, you can see there it was kind of like usually more negative or on the line, and now it's right around mid-month it flipped to being more positive.
Yeah.
So that's just something I've noticed the past couple of months.
Not a good score either. You're right. I mean, look at these scores. I mean, the correlations here.
Which
Hey, if you're making a 7-day forecast, that's pretty good. But if you're making
which is even stranger because usually, and you'd have to check the other two teleconnections to check this. Usually the PNA is the most reliable, even in 14 days, of the three teleconnections. The NAO, AO, and PNA that they have on the NCEP website. So it's just this. I don't know if it's this winter or this year or something. Yeah, like granted that's kind of a pretty wide spread, but it's still better with the correlation. But it's just strange because usually, and I don't have any statistical data to back this up, but usually from what I recall, the PNA is even at 14 days is the most reliable one, and it's this year it's for whatever reason it's not. So it's just a strange thing to me.
Let me, I promise, last question for maybe Greg before we shift on to the forecast, but, and feel free to take the fifth on this. But, obviously a lot of talk about La Nina. We're in La Nina, or at least in SST La Nina, base state, whatever. In your experience, is there anything, just trying to, pull this back, anything with respect to the fact that we're in a linear base state that might lead you to believe that we would see errors in this kind of fashion?
No, I mean, most of the market was counting on that La Nina base state to get them to that torchish type of forecast. I think the staff kind of proved that, right, with some of the other participants in there. So, this one was, obviously a little bit more of a surprise to get that southern tier cooling to come into play. And that was I think pretty seen across multiple vendors. So, and I think you could probably pull up all the additional forecasts too, and you'll see that type of error for the most part.
And that brings up an idea for future as we continue to think about new additions to the forecast contest or whatever. It would be great. And I know some groups have this great. They have access to some of this stuff. But it would be great if we had just like we have some of the error metrics in terms of the HDDs and CDDs or whatever. it'd be great to have some, short, medium range, short term or 30-day or something errors, maybe even longer, 60, 90, based on, patterns, so that we can see, is there, over the last 30 days, for example, has there been a bias, in terms of, the heights. Now, obviously, we get some of that information from the PNA index, like Michael mentioned. So we do get some information there, but still, it would be nice to see it spatially, to see, what a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day error pattern looked like.
I swear there was, way back in the day, there was definitely a U.S. government site that had that specifically for the GFS op and the GFS ensemble. I'm not sure if that still persists or exists. I mean, I think one person you can possibly reach out to is what's her name, Alicia Bentley. I think she might be able to direct you, because I know she works for the government, and she does a lot of visualizations. So that's perhaps someone you could reach out to and say, hey, is there like a bias corrected kind of a map plot of 11 to 15, 6 to 10? I think there might be something out there somewhere. Some dead link, or maybe it is still existing out there somewhere in the U.S. government repertoire.
That's right. I think that's right. All right, thank you. Yeah, Alicia's great. She's done some great work with some of that stuff. Okay, so I guess we have to. It's always fun to talk about. It's like a sporting event, right? It's easier to talk about why a team won or lost than it is to talk about what's going to happen going forward. But we have to do it, right? All right, so let's switch gears here and talk about the forecast. So again, these are the forecasts that were made on Tuesday, so yesterday. And I got a lot of forecasts today, or yesterday. I just sorted it by the forecast mean. So on the colder end, looks like we've got forecasts in the 150 HDD range. Normal, I guess it's all relative though. Looks like normal, the 30-year normal was, about 150, 151. So almost all forecasts were warmer than the 30-year here. The 10-year was, where's my 10-year? 138. So a number of forecasts include Philip. Let's see. Philip's looks like Philip again is the colder of the forecast. Least warm is maybe a better way to put it. But we have quite a range here too, all the way down to Matt Lanza and Paul, Professor Roundy at 112. So we got a decent range today, or as the last forecast, 112 up to 150, and it's going to be interesting, right? I'll turn this over to the group to talk about here, but we've talked a lot about over the last few minutes the fact that we had a very warm forecast that didn't verify nearly as warm, and when I look at so this is the forecast. This is the 16 and 20 energy report from Maxar from yesterday when our forecasts were issued. So again, sticking with the idea that we're going to get this, I guess, torch, whatever you want to call it, like almost the entire country warm. And the models, definitely are going in that direction too. And let's cheat, right? I mean, I'm not serious, but let's see. Let's look. Thanks to our friends at Maxar, they make we could look at these day strips, if you will, for the next 15 days and kind of say, all right, well, at least what's coming forward here. And no doubt, December, just to get your bearings, December 9th, that's today, all the way out to December 23rd. So it was like a 15, 16 day forecast here. I'm looking at the GFS ensemble. It's kind of color coded. We don't have to look at the details, but you can definitely see we get some warm, periods in here. So it's certainly not like we're not, it's going to, it's staying normal forever. At least if you believe the 2 to 6 day forecast, we are going to get a pulse of pretty good, darn good warmth, and even into the 610, some decent warmth there too. That's the GFS ensemble, and here's the EC ensemble, which definitely get that warm pulse here. But then it looks like a little bit of variability in the 610, and then maybe back again. Again, if you take it for assume it's correct, and as you get to 11 to 15, obviously things get a little bit more dicey. So that's a quick look at the next 15 days. But I guess let's open it up now. Let's go back to our forecast page here, and I don't know, Philip, why don't you do the honors here again? So what do you see? I mean, again, there's some pretty good spread here. should I put it this way? Why do you think Matt Lanza is wrong? That's probably not a fair way to put it. But why are you, what's your sort of forecast rationale here? And has anything changed in your rationale over the last day based on any new data?
Taking a quick look at my strategy, I think that it's pretty similar to what happened 15 days ago, or I guess 20 days ago. But yeah, so for this forecast, once again, I have similar weightings. The only thing I changed was I made the EC 0% and the CFS 5%, which should actually shift my forecast a little warmer than it could have been. Actually, when I was putting everything together, I thought I was going to have a very warm signal thanks to the models and the CPC. But I guess with the tropical forcing coming in as a very weak warm signal, and the MJO analog is essentially about normal, and then the teleconnections was actually treated as a slightly cold signal where it looked like there was some model consensus of a negative AO and NAO, and then the EPO and the PNA were forecast to be around positive or near neutral, which would make that so with the exception of the EPO, all of them would suggest that there's a higher chance of cold in the eastern US, which is completely at odds with everything else in the forecast.
Yeah. Any questions for Philip on his forecast rationale or strategy?
This isn't really a question for Phil. I mean, he can answer if he wants, but it's more of a broad question. How do we explain why the teleconnections are so at odds with all the other warmth? I mean, usually when people see negative AO and negative NAO, people tend to think, or at least I certainly do, that we're looking at a definite cold signal for the east, at the very least the northeast, if not even a little bit further, and with a neutral to positive PNA, usually you'd expect kind of a warm west, cooler east kind of signal, and that was kind of the exact opposite of pretty much everything I saw as well. And I just thought that was very strange and wanted to know if there was any kind of explanation as to that.
I think the one reason why everything's kind of like, going against those types of teleconnections is specifically, Dave, if you go down to the bottom and what those other meteorologists were showing.
There you go.
What is that, quadruple or triple plus sign EPOs? Yeah, that's what's going on. People are just giving more weight to one particular teleconnection and saying that's the dominant force that's just going to drive everything else and fade everything else type of deal. And that's how you get to those really warm forecasts right there at the bottom, at least from David D'Arcangelo and Matt Lanza. I mean, Roundy's got his own different way of forecasting, so he's coming it up with something different. And I'll shut up.
That is interesting, though. I think Greg's, that makes sense, right? That someone saying, hey, EPO is just going to dominate and it could trump, AO and all that kind of stuff, right? We've seen that happen. I think it is, all things being equal, I think it has a, stronger correlation with U.S. temperatures. I just pulled, it looks like I actually did the maps right in this forecast. It's funny, I was just looking, here's the CFS and here's the EC. Now certainly the EC gives you a little bit of a stronger flavor here. And here's the CFS. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but I would definitely not say this is like a booming, Gulf of Alaska low, right? It's fragmented. I mean, it would obviously lean warm, but it's kind of, it's messy, right? It's not a really strong, it doesn't take much imagination to say, well, if this ridge pokes just a little bit further north, boom, this whole thing explodes. And, again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I think that's fair enough. But let's do that for a second, you know, when the forecast verifies 85, I'll eat my words, right? But yeah, even this positive EPO here, it looks a little tenuous to me. It's not exactly how I'd like it to. It looks like, you know, because you obviously have to, you know, as meteorologists, we're especially, you know, some of us are, we're kind of like artists too a little bit, right? You know, you have to be creative about this. And this is a 16 to 20 day forecast. So I kind of look at this here too, and I'm like, is this really showing that there's going to be a strong low here? Or is it just kind of saying that it doesn't know? And there's a lot of uncertainty in this area, right? And obviously, if we had the spaghettis, we'd kind of look at that a little bit. But this doesn't scream to me necessarily strong Gulf of Alaska low. It's a little bit north, and there's a lot of low pressure sneaking into you know, Alaska. I'm not, you know, I'm seeing a weakness across, you know, key areas of the Midwest and in the north, and you know, northern plains and stuff like this. So maybe it will verify, you know, super strong positive EPO, but I don't get warm. You know, this is my own personal feeling. I don't get that warm and fuzzy feeling just looking at this map. Anyone else want to interject?
I guess looking at my forecast, I think one of the things that surprised me was how consistent. I don't think you can find this archive, but the models were pretty consistent in showing a negative NAO and negative AO for this forecast period when I was using Maxar's teleconnection page to get like an ensemble of the Euro, GFS, and the Canadian. And they all showed very consistent for NAO and AO, which is pretty rare. And then the PNA was less, there was more spread, but they were generally in that near neutral, maybe even slightly positive range. And then the EPO, which seems like it might be the most important one, is also the least certain one, where there was a much larger spread in the model solutions, at least looking at a multi-model ensemble.
Yeah. Interesting. I won't pull all that up just because it would take a while, but that's good information to know. And Philip, since you were talking there, I was thinking about some of the things you said about the MGO recently, and I also, you know, all right, so yeah, December 10th, that's about right. You know, you can see why. What was our MGO forecast again for this week? Yeah, it's up near the 30-year, right? It's right about there. You can see why here again. You know, so where are we right now? We're just get my bearings.
Just
sure
barely in phase 5, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah. This is old. Let me just update that. Sure, got the last one. Yeah. So this is a couple days old, but yeah, we're just right 4 or 5. Call it somewhere out there. It's a couple days old. Go back. Yeah. So we're right out. Whatever. If you want to be exact, somewhere around here, right? You know, that's not a super warm signal. I mean, this is historic, right? This is just one way. There's a million ways to, you know, use the MGO, but I'm using it, at least in this context, as our MGO analog tool that we have right now. And you can't use that to say that it's a warm signal, right? It's here. I mean, it's not a warm signal. I mean, it's, you know, plus or minus anyway, a couple HDDs. It's not a warm signal. I mean, to get to a warm signal at this time of year for the 16 to 20, it does change if you're looking at other periods. So but we're talking about the 16 to 20, you know, you really want to be in phase 2 and 3-ish, right? A good moderate to strong 2, 3. And I think you can make a good argument there for a warm signal. We're out here, right? So that doesn't give it. Let's take one look. You know, let's look at the rationale from Maxar today or yesterday, and let's see let's see if we get any good nuggets. Again, this is December 8th, so yesterday. Let's just skim over it. The pattern is broadly warm, having positive EPO characteristics with forcing from the MGO. Okay, so again, you know, different views on that. The MGO is a tropical wave. The MGO is a tropical wave, which is not expected to move. Okay, energy transfer in this reaction to strengthen the Pacific jet. Forecast is significantly warmer. So this is really interesting. It'd be, you know, it's unfair to them, right? They're not here to kind of defend their forecast. But if they were here, like, yeah, that's one of the questions I'd ask them. Like, you know, obviously they must have different ways to evaluate, interpret the MGO. They're obviously seeing it different than at least that tool that we have available to us. And it would be interesting to see that, to understand better their interpretation here in terms of how that results in a warm signal.
I would say, because I'm not going to say anything, why don't you pull up the Dynacast? I understand what they were talking about, but pull up Dynacast. Do you have access to their MJO?
I think we do. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, TC
Yeah.
data? No?
Let's see. Yeah.
MJO?
QBO. Sorry.
Where's MJO?
Maybe go off of this page. You go to another teleconnection. Well, actually, get out of this menu. Hold on.
Okay.
I thought.
Monthly?
Yeah, maybe it is monthly.
Let's try. All right. MJO?
You see it up there? Is it populated? Because they used to have the ability to look at MGO, and you could, specify the actual dates and the phases.
Maybe we don't. We're not the super VIP like you, Greg. Unfortunately, no. Maybe we can.
Not
ask
even
that.
close. Not even close. I'll take a look on my end to see if. Okay. Go back to that preset teleconnection analogs drop down menu.
This one. Okay.
It's not on there, huh?
I don't see it. We got a lot of acronyms, but I don't see the MJO. Anyone else? Michael or Philip, have you guys seen it before?
I feel like I have.
Me too. That's why I'm like.
Let me check something.
I feel like maybe it's under maps, not. Wait.
Just go back to the main page. Just go back to the main page and get out of this 500 millibar stuff. Go to surface temperature.
Okay, good idea. Good idea. Let's go to
yeah.
All right, let's go to CONUS too or whatever. Yeah. All right, this is the basic.
Okay, now go down to user defined. Was that preset teleconnection analogs?
Aha.
Booyah! There you go.
All right, super user. It's a good thing we got great. All right, so what do you want? Phase 5 or 4?
Well, it illuminates what they're thinking.
Okay, yeah. Let's illuminate.
And then put on the right dates. Make sure you get the correct dates in there.
Okay. So, is it initialization or is it forecast, Greg? Do you know?
What they do is, they look back at history for those particular dates that verify in that MGO phase. And so they're saying they think they see a standing wave, right? On 4 and 5. And so it gets you some ideas. So you can back it up to MGO phase 4 and MGO phase 5, like you're showing right there, just to get an idea of where their heads are at.
Okay, there's
their tools.
There's phase 4. That's a nice one. If I'm doing this right, I by the way, I just plugged in December just as a general idea, and I MJO phase 4. So there's phase 4. This is phase 5.
It looks like they're more heavily weighting the phase 4. This phase 4 looks awful warm and similar to their forecast.
Yeah, like trim it back to so what are the dates again that is verifying the backside of this month, right? So just go like the 15th to the 31st and
right, so
see if that makes any difference. I've done this before. It's fun. You're like, oh, okay.
All right, a little even warmer, a little warmer. And then let's see phase 4. I would imagine that's still going to be warm. Yeah, still very, very warm. So there you go. That's this is the game, right? Like, and this is also what makes forecasting so challenging, and it's so easy to get into a bias because it's easy to find what you're looking for. You know what I mean? And that's always a danger with forecasting. But yeah, and certainly I'm not saying that Maxar's doing this. I'm not saying that I'm doing it in this situation. But this is I think there's a very fair analysis that we just pulled up, and all of a sudden, hey, it looks really warm. I think this is also a kind of a fair analysis, and it says, not so warm. And I think the big difference, let me see if I understand, this is interesting because, actually this could be important because, Greg's point was, well, contemporaneously, if you, we're not making any assumptions in these charts about progression. I'm agnostic to progression, right? I'm saying that the way this was formulated was, if it's in this point, whatever any of these points that you see, it's taking the points that move fast, it's taking the points that move slow, it's taking points that MJO waves, I should say, that move the backwards, if you will. It's agnostic, right? But But like to Greg's point, like, hey, if you feel super confident that the MGO is going to be non-progressive, it's going to kind of stall, it's going to move slow, then you might want to filter. It's fair. That's fair. You might want to do that. But this is interesting. This take more digging, because now I'm looking basically contemporaneously. I'm looking at lag 1 to 5. So, effectively contemporaneously. So even what this suggests is you have to be really careful. And this is actually why I like this chart. If if phase 5 is strong, moderate to strong, and we verify in phase 5, yeah, that's a pretty darn good warm signal. But if it verifies weak, if it does not get out of the circle, or even if it's weak in the circle, it's a much weaker verification here. So this kind of tells you that the devil could be in the details here, in terms of, if it verifies stronger than expected, that's going to lead more credence to, I think, the warmer, maybe, Maxar solution. If it verifies cooler, or verifies weaker within the circle, et cetera, then that maybe adds a little bit more credence to the, film solution. Any thoughts on that?
I'll just say that makes sense to me, what you're saying. Also, even if it was only a weak phase 4 as well, that doesn't look like a particularly strong warm signal until you get into a moderate phase 4. And looking at the forecast, it seems mostly phase 5. I saw one wacky ensemble even got the phase 6, a couple of them. So I'm not sure. I'm certainly not as gung ho about, from my forecast, about the warmth either. I'm actually just a little curious. Can you, on the Maxar map, I don't want to change the subject too much, but what are the teleconnections? Like if you go negative AO, NAO, positive PNA, if you get all three of them in there, what kind of signal does that show? Just for a
Oh, you mean back to
comparison.
Dynacast?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, where was I? Sorry. Dynacast. Where the heck was I? Is this it? Yeah. So you'd like me to plug in, what was that again? PNA?
If you can get the NAO, the AO, and the PNA, I don't know how many it lets you do.
I don't know.
Or if it just does one at a time. Just do
Yeah.
one at a time.
If I don't, assuming I'm even doing this right, is that, did it actually load?
I
Let me
don't
see.
know.
Yeah, it did. Something just changed with the AO. Let's see if the map changes. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's those daily teleconnection analogs, right? So I forget how they actually do the weightings on that.
I think you have to remove those weights and just maybe I don't know how the weights work, but
Well, I think it's, but I think, isn't that what, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Isn't this what you wanted though, Michael, to?
yeah, I just don't know how exactly those weights. I wanted to see, because that was that EPO.
Oh, EPO, yeah. Looks
No,
funky.
we were looking at the MJO. The MJO forecast was based on whatever phase we were in. But it looks like, just looking at all these other things, it looks to me that um, a lot of the other signals are either just downright cold or not nearly as warm as the MJO, and it seems like they put a lot of weight into it, which can from this is from personal experience. Someone wants to correct me if I'm wrong, but um, that can either work out really well or really badly. So I guess it's a we'll see kind of moment, but it doesn't. I don't mean to you know rag on Maxar, but it doesn't look like, to me personally, I'm not very confident in their forecast. I'll probably end up being wrong, but
Yeah, this is a really interesting forecast. I'm just looking at the clock. We only have a couple minutes left. But I think this is an interesting way to diagnose it. And but on the flip side, right, here's the EPO analogs, and the EPO analogs certainly are warm. And if you believe that the EPO is going to be the primary driver, you definitely have some support. But I that was great, Michael, actually, just to pull up some of those AO analogs and stuff, because it is a good gut check anyway, because time of year, things like that. So maybe the AO this time of year doesn't mean cold, or whatever. Well, again, not that the AO is going to trump everything else. It may not, and we may end up with a super warm forecast. But if you do believe that the AO is going to have a significant influence, you're right. You would probably want to either open up your wristbands or trend or shift maybe a little closer to normal, et cetera. So it's good to look at those things. Greg, is there anything you want to add there?
I was just gonna.
Yeah, I mean, no comments on the forecast at this moment, but
we'll see. I mean, I am glad too that we did. It was an interesting way to look at the MGO too. I think in the fact that maybe a weak versus a strong event could have a different outcome. Again, it's not fair. We don't have Maxar here to talk about that. But it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out here. And I will say this, and Greg, you correct me if I'm wrong here. Physically speaking, I think what you see in a chart like this, but put aside the forecast, put aside today's forecast. I think physically it makes you can justify this, right? I think most meteorologists would say, hey, listen, if you give me a stronger MGO event, it is more likely to have a more significant influence, a canonical type influence on the Pacific North American pattern, and to produce those kind of canonical results, i.e., warm in certain phases and cold in other phases, and that when it's weaker, it allows for other signals, other pattern drivers to play a bigger role. So I think the way this looks, I don't think there's anything wrong with, but it's still, there's obviously other factors, other features, and just other questions in terms of how.
Hey Dave, can you go to the back half of the month? I know you're looking at D's 10th, 1 through 5, no progression. Go to
let's
that
see
plot.
here. December. Let me see
That's
here.
how we roll. Go back to
sorry.
Go back to that actual page you were on. No.
Yeah, the MJO analog tool.
Oh,
yeah,
this
the
guy?
MGO analog tool. Yeah, not that one. No, the one with the actual phase space plot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's no problem. Just flip it to the backside of the month because you have it as D's 10th mark date. Can you just go and do the 1 to 5 day analog?
Oh yeah.
No, there you go. Okay. So
December 20th. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And so that's how they do. You can see that it becomes a little bit more of a warmer signal in the weaker phases.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And we look at this. I was just doing December 20th, December. You can see how these points, right? Again, if you're let's just simplify things. Look at MGO. That MGO is the only factor here. It's a tricky one still, right? It is, right? If it verifies a little bit more positive, which it may, it definitely does lead credence. And then all of a sudden, though, if that thing gets up, it's just a little bit weaker. This is January 1st. Let me go back. Sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. Here's December 20th. But also, obviously, it's good to kind of go back and forth in time too, right? Because this is, weather's doesn't stop on its certain date. But yeah,
are you sure about that, Dave? I thought I knew the calendar. It was just like, December 22nd. I'm out to another phase.
No, but this will be an interesting one to see how it verifies and to see again is this a case where the models might be picking up on too much of a warm signal, or is there something else going on here and that EPO is going to come forward and we're going to see that blowtorch? Right? Definitely an interesting one. All right, well, I guess I don't want to hold, and especially Greg, since he's been here the whole hour. Greg, it was really great having you here. I hope you join us again, and in a future session too. We'd be, if you're interested, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience and stuff like that for some of the folks, especially folks who don't make the call. Obviously we have the recordings and stuff that we post online. So, but it was great having you here.
Thanks.
All right, well, thanks guys. We'll do it again next week.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. Bye everyone.
Bye.